would you like to share with the initial thing that sparked the idea for this community garden?
First thing was encountering the diocesan climate change leaflet, working through the individual pledges and then moving on to look at the rest. And the words just jumped out at me under the community heading. Number 6 says, allow fruit and vegetable planting on church land. And I just kept thinking about it. And I thought how most churches are surrounded by graves. And then I thought, but at All Saints, the Mission Church, it's just grass. I'm sure it is. So I went up and had a look and took some photos, which you'll see. And I just saw it as a vibrant, abundant space full of life and hope, really. And it reminded me of the city on the hill that Jesus spoke of, I suppose, just being a source of just shining out to the rest of the community as something to share. So that's where it all started.
So this is how the garden appeared when I first arrived. The sun was gloriously shining, and I just saw 2 heads at the end of the garden, deep in conversation, laughter, and just this wonderful green space. And yeah, it was such an exciting place to visit. This is an image of fairly recently. What we wanted to show you was these images. Julie?
I suppose the next step on the journey was after I started thinking about this idea, was running it past a few people. Life in this community as a Christian, really, and how to use the skills that I had, and it just seemed to take shape on the walk. And I ran it past a few other people. I was told, well, this is mission, you can definitely apply for funding for this. So yeah, we were delighted that we did the application to the diocese, and we were awarded funding to start the project. This is obviously after we got approval from our PCC, going back about 3 years now.
I too, although I don't professionally do horticulture like Julie, in the past I had done a series of horticulture classes and qualifications, and didn't really know kind of what was going to happen with those, and put that to one side for a long time. But also, again, at the same time, but separately, had been thinking very much about the call for Christians to care for the earth and our environmental responsibility. And so at the meeting, so Julie and I are members of the PCC for the local church. And so when Julie raised it, immediately, I think I'd said yes without even thinking, realising that I'd said yes, that this was something that I wanted to be involved with and to help come to fruition, really. And then the two of us got together and just dreamed, really. And
it's been such teamwork, I have to say, because Sean is so expert with all the techie stuff and the writing for the parish magazine and the publicity and the social media and all of that. And I'm much more sort of hands-on and the practicalities of what we need and the networking somehow. And together we're a formidable team, aren't we?
It's absolutely brilliant. Calling and giftings and working together as a body has also very much been part of the story of how the garden has come into being, really, as well. We have a number of underpinning values, really. We wanted, as a reflection of God's love that we have received, to create something that was beautiful and fruitful, because God is beautiful and life with him is fruitful. And we wanted to be a blessing to the village. And the values that we have, I think, very, very strongly is that this is a partnership with the village. It's responsive to the needs of the village. It's not church telling anybody what it is that people need. And there are no strings attached. It's a place and a space for all. The words that keep coming around in my head at the moment are we're creating common ground. And that's common ground between the people who are part of the church community and the wider community, and that the space of the community garden is where we can all meet together on equal terms. There's no strings attached, and there's beauty, and there's produce to share, and there's time for all. So those are the main values, I think. It's a gift to the village without strings, and is a reflection of the blessing that we've received from God.
Yeah, well, we involved the community right from the outset. We had a public meeting to which we invited anyone that was interested. And so, before we even started, we had support from the garden club, the WI, the Brownies, the school. Everyone was very keen to hear more about the project. And so then when we needed things doing, the right people seemed to be there at the right time.
Oh, yeah, you had a wonderful story of when you were building the raised beds and there was a chap that just had the right gifts to come and help you.
Well, it's amazing, because, that was the part he played. So many people have played a role, and he's not really part of the church, but I knew him from working down at St. Mylor churchyard. Making the raised beds was obviously quite a thing. And he said, oh, yeah, no, I've made them in my garden, and do you want to have a look? And I said, oh, that would be great. And I said, yes, that's exactly what we need. And anyway, before we knew it, he was working out how much wood we need and actually doing the orders. He built the beds with assistance from me and another chap who, people have just been really supportive. And, I remember Richard once saying, well, you're not much good at getting people here, are you? And I said, actually, I think we've got exactly the right people here, Richard. And looking at him, the people we had were able to do all that was needed. I thought, goodness, if I had a dozen people show up that had to be coordinated, it would have actually been much more challenging. So we had exactly what was needed at the right time.
Wonderful.
Which was truly an answer to the prayers. And throughout all of the project, the prayer group has underpinned what we're doing.
Fantastic.
That was really important. Well, we had the Brownies along to help plant all the plants, and then the school started coming, I think, didn't they, Sean?
I think that's actually much more. Yes, they did. I think also it's really part of the extraordinary lockdown story that really was the way that the school really became fully integrated. So we had our first season of the garden, and Julie and I were just really amazed at how from grass to a constructed garden where we had got fruit and vegetables and things growing, and we had all kinds of plans for what the 2020 season was going to bring, and we bought lots of seeds. We had meetings with the Brownie leaders to organise. They were going to come once a half term. We had other ideas with the WI, and then of course the pandemic struck, and we thought at that point, well, we can only just keep the garden just weeded and tidied and maintained. And we found that actually that was far from what happened. The garden developed in ways that we just had not even imagined, and the community actually used it so much as a focal point during really tough times for everybody. We started off by giving away the seeds that we got ready for all the different groups. And so Julie and I began going around the village when the people were self-isolating, families with children without anything to do, or people who felt vulnerable. And then that opened out to basically anybody who wanted the seeds. And we started a campaign called Grow It Forward. So we gave away free seeds, and that was at a time too when actually seeds became hard to come by, and we had some and we could share them. All we said was, if you have free seeds from the community garden, then please share any plants with your neighbours and bring one back to the community garden. And through doing that, actually we were able to really, really stock the garden, keep it going. We had the school then, which had children who were vulnerable children or children of key workers. So a small group, they came up a couple of times a week actually and used it as an outdoor classroom. They were watering, they had art lessons up here. And that connection that was forged during that difficult time has now continued. And they are actually asking us, can they come to the garden? Could they also have a session about baptism in the church as part of the RE curriculum? We had families using the garden as part of where their daily exercise was, families and individuals taking on responsibility for watering. And it also provided a place for others for just peace and reflection. And again, somewhere that was beautiful when times were really hard. So it wasn't the year we had planned for, but actually it was so important in terms of that sense that the community garden belonged to everybody, and it isn't seen as a churchy thing at all. It really is Mylor's community garden. It belongs to Mylor Bridge, and that came out of lockdown in ways that really, really surprised us. And we just see God's Spirit at work doing things that we didn't plan. That bench, I think, again, it speaks of how the community garden has become an important part of people's lives. Interacted with one of our volunteers, and actually they were getting rid of some things from his house, and one of them was an old wooden bench, and they just asked, did we want it? So we said yes, of course. And then they asked and approached us to say, would it be okay if they actually had a proper granite memorial for their father there? And they donated a beautiful rose called Pilgrim, because although their father hadn't had any connection at all with church, they as a family wanted to have somewhere special to remember him by. And so we were really, really delighted people in the community would ask that and would see the garden as being that kind of special, sacred space, if you like, for them, even though they wouldn't call themselves believers at all.
Well, I'd like to give a really big thank you to Julie Monroe and Sian Gaston for giving up their time to allow this recording, and just to say what a wonderful blessing this community garden is, not just for Mylor, but also for us across the diocese to see how God is working in our communities. So thank you so much, ladies.